This is the Unit 2 study guide over science inquiry. So our first question asks us, what is the difference between a scientific theory and a scientific law? So a scientific theory is a well-tested explanation for a wide range of observations or experiments. And something you need to add to your definition is that it can be changed when new evidence contradicts it. So a theory is what scientists expect to happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will always happen. A scientific law is a statement that describes what scientists expect to happen every time under a particular set of conditions. So a law is more definite. It is what will happen when they complete that experiment under certain conditions. What does a hypothesis have to be? And it has to be testable. What is an independent variable? Our independent variable is the variable that we purposely change in an experiment. It's what we get to manipulate. Now, a dependent variable is a factor that may change in response to our independent variable. So this is our reaction to our independent variable. So now we have the 5 steps of the scientific method. Step number 1 is our problem or our question, whichever way you want to put it, I am fine with. And this is where we ask a question about something we observe. And this is where we write our testable question, which is in our format, does our independent variable affect the dependent variable? Our second step is our research. And we do research to help find the best way to do things. It also helps us make sure that we don't repeat past mistakes of other people. Our third step is hypothesis. And this is our educated guess as to how things will work. We know we write our hypothesis as an if-then statement, so it's if independent variable, then dependent variable. Our fourth step is our experiment. And in our experiment, we test whether our prediction is accurate. And we actually can repeat this step several times. Our final step is to analyze and conclude, and make sure you give me both of those words whenever you describe our last step. If you do not give me analyze and conclude, I will take off. So in this step, this is where we collect our measurements. And we analyze them to see if they support our hypothesis. Our next question asks us, what is an observation? So we know that an observation is a statement that describes a fact. And for an observation, we use our 5 senses. Now, an inference is an interpretation of our facts. It's what we think is going on based upon our observations. Okay, next we're given this table which talks about the number of BMWs sold. We have different states and we have 4 different months out of the year. And our first question asks us to calculate the average number of BMWs sold for New York, Illinois, and Florida. They already did California for us. And we need to fill in our answer in the table. So let's start with New York. And let's talk about how we find average. In order to find average, we add up all of our numbers and then divide by how many numbers we have. And in this case, we're going to divide by 4 since we're adding up 4 numbers. So for New York, we're taking 1,239 plus 2,834 plus 3,002 plus 1,533, and we're dividing it by 4. When we add our numerator, we get 8,908, and we divide by 4, which gives us an answer of 2,227. For Illinois, I'm not going to write out all of the addition, but we know we need to add 921 plus 2,712 plus 2,945 plus 1,034. And when we add all those together, we get 7,612. And again, since we're adding 4 numbers, we want to divide by 4. And this gives us an answer of 1,903. And then in Florida, we want to add our 4 numbers, 3,436 plus 2,280 plus 2,417 plus 1,003, and we get 9,136. And again, we need to divide that by 4 since we're adding up 4 numbers, and we get 2,284. So there we have our averages. Now, based upon our averages, we're going to make a bar graph from the table. And we have to make sure that we include a title, we label our axes, and we have our units. So let's start with our title. It actually already gives us our title up here, and it's the number of BMWs sold. Our independent variable is going to be our states. So at the bottom, we're going to label our states. So we're going to label our axes by states. And I'm going to do every 2 as one state. So we have California, New York, Illinois, and Florida. Now, it's okay if you don't use 2 bars or two columns for each state. That's fine. You can just use 1. You can also space them out. So there's a space in between your bars. That's also okay, as long as you have the correct information. So then our dependent variable is going to be our average. So over here we're going to write our average. And it's our average number of BMWs from March to June. Average number of BMWs from March to June. So now what we need to do in order to number our dependent variable here, we need to look at our averages. And we see that our largest average is actually California with 2,718.5. So we need to go to around at least 3,000. We always want to make sure we start down here at 0. And I'm actually going to go up by 300. So I have 300, 600, 900, 1,200, 1,500, 1,800, 2,100, 2,400, 2,700, 3,000, 3,300, and our top is 3,600. If you label them slightly different, it's okay as long as you start at 0 and you go up by an equal amount every time, and as long as you get high enough to graph our California average. So our California average was 2,718.5, so it's going to be about right in here. Go ahead and draw our bar and shade it in. You do not have to color a bar graph, but you can if you want to. It's your choice. We have New York is 2,227. So it's going to put us about right in here. Illinois is 1,903, which is about right here. And our last one, Florida is 2,284, so it's just very slightly higher than New York. There we go. Okay, so now we're on to observations and inferences. So remember, our observations are facts. These are things where we use our senses, so things that we can see, smell, taste, touch, and hear. So there's a lot of different observations. I'm just going to list 3. So one observation would be that she has an ice pack on her head. Another would be that she's holding a phone. And a third one could be that she has a blanket wrapped around her. Again, all of these are facts, things that we can see. Now, inferences might be that she is sick. We cannot tell that just based upon looking at this picture. It's what we are interpreting about her. I could also infer that she is calling the doctor. Anytime you have inferences, you should be able to say why you think she is sick. So I would say she is sick because She has an ice pack on her head, she's holding a coffee mug, she has a blanket around her. You have to be able to give me some kind of reasoning. Okay, now on to the next one. So it says, write a hypothesis based on the following testable questions. So our question is, what effect does light have on plant growth? So we know with a hypothesis, we have to know what our independent and dependent variables are. So let's start first of all by identifying those. Our independent variable would be our amount of light that the plant receives. And our dependent variable would be the plant growth. So now we can go back up to our hypothesis. So we know we have if independent, then dependent. So we'll begin with if the amount of light a plant receives increases, then the plant growth will increase. Now our standardizing variables are our constants. And there's lots of different constants in this experiment, but I ask you to list at least 3. So one might be the amount of water the plant receives. One could be the type of soil it's in. And the last one could be a temperature, that all the plants are at the same temperature at the same time. And then we have our control group, and our control group is one that we aren't really doing the experiment to. It's our control. And our control group would be the plant receiving no light. So now let's look at our next one. This one's a little bit more challenging. It says, how does calcium affect bone strength? So again, let's start with our variables. Our independent variable will be the amount of calcium. And our dependent variable will be the bone strength, because our bone strength depends on the amount of calcium we receive. So if the amount of calcium you receive increases, then your bone strength will increase. So again, we need to list our standardizing variables or our constants, and this one's a little bit more challenging. So maybe the type of food that we're eating, or the types or the amounts of drinks that we have. And the last one could be how much exercise we receive. Oops, I cannot spell guys. E-X-E-R-C-I-S-E. There we go. Our control group would be the group receiving no extra calcium. Number 14 says, when performing an experiment, why should we conduct more than one trial or have more than one group? And we want to have more than one group because we want to make sure our results are staying consistent no matter how many times we do this experiment. Also, with doing more than one trial, it allows us to get an average. Okay.